Okay, it seems like every day there's crisis and chaos, crisis and chaos. I don't know how much of it is purposeful as we head into the inauguration date, and how much of it is just Biden's policies allowing for terror to hit the homeland of the United States. To help me go through these big stories, I have retired Colonel John Mills. Colonel Mills, thank you so much for joining me.
Stephen, thank you. Always an honor to be on the show with you.
So lots going on. I've got a lot of questions that I'd like your insight on. The first one being, is there any chance that the FBI has been so distracted with chasing down January 6 grandmas that terrorists from around the world have created sleeper cells, training programs in an attempt to attack the United States in the coming months and years? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. The intelligence community and federal law enforcement, they operate off of essentially codename operations. And that's just not to be secretive. It's actually a budgetary measure, and it's actually required by Congress. And that way they can very rapidly reprioritize and retarget, because they just constantly shift this priority rack up and down. It's actually in some ways, I wish DOD would operate like this, but in many ways it's a budgetary tracking tool so that Congress knows what they're spending money on. And so, they'll say, okay, this week Operation Wingnut is number one. Now Operation, Umpty Ump is now number one. And they constantly redo the stack. And then, as a line agent, a line worker, what is the priority? So when it comes to this, most of what you're talking about has been low on the stack, maybe even below the cut line, if even on the stack at all. So absolutely, there's only so much federal law enforcement and intelligence community resources. They can't possibly cover all the bases anyway. So they have to constantly reprioritize the stack. And if the stack priority is going after J6ers, going after grandmas in front of abortion clinics, going after parents who went to a school board meeting, oh, absolutely. And this is what is atrocious. And those priority stacks are known, and we need to get those into the hands of the right congressional members, and we need to have accountability for this. And so absolutely.
Christopher Wray and Alejandro Mayorkas have been summoned to Washington, D.C. to explain the Las Vegas situation and the New Orleans situation. Do you think that they will show up, or do you think they're just going to say, listen, our time in D.C. is over, we're moving on with our careers?
Well, if they're formally requested to appear in front of Congress before January 20th, of course they still have to. Now, do they play gamesmanship and delay, defer, not show up? Oh yeah. The Obama-Biden folks were, they give the stiff arm and Heisman to Congress all the time. And it is, three separate but equal branches of government. And hey, I've been in the executive branch, and we've played rightful games. Sometimes Congress was asking a little bit out of their lane of what proper oversight is. So it is, there is always a healthy dynamic tension, but if they're asked to appear, they have to appear. And just because it's the end of the administration until, 12 noon on January 20th, they're still in the seat.
Okay. I guess we'll see whether they comply or if those officially go out, or if it's just more of a verbal request. But I do believe a lot of people have answers on that. I have a question that I'd like an answer on. I don't know that you have the right answer, but I know a lot of people in my community are agitated by this. So Representative Liz Cheney is put on the January 6th committee by Nancy Pelosi. She betrays President Trump and then goes on to do witness manipulation, witness intimidation, speaking with witnesses without their lawyers present, destroys January 6th evidence, and then somehow ends up getting the highest medal that can be awarded to a citizen by President Biden. Is there ever going to be any accountability on Liz Cheney and the J6 committee?
Oh, I think there will be. This is Kash Patel, Bondi as AG, others. This is not vengeful. This is not about revenge. This is about accountability and deterrence. People committed suicide. People lost everything. People were imprisoned and incarcerated under the most egregious of conditions and held under egregious conditions. So you bet. And I mean, I think it's laughable. Nobody cares about this award that she got from Biden, who at this point in time, nobody has respect for, including his own side. So they're all about slapping each other on the back with awards. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Okay. So Liz Cheney is just a vengeful, hateful person, and lost her seat, as she should have. So I'm glad that happened. I mean, that was really but is there going to be accountability? I think so. And hey, we cannot let this happen. And this game that for years the Republicans played of just always, hey, we're just going to get along, play. I know they play mean, but we're going to play. We got to get some sharp elbows. And again, this is not about being vengeful. This is about accountability. She and Kinzinger, hey, they manipulated evidence. They withheld evidence. Come on, they put Navarro and Bannon in prison. You got to be kidding me. They worked with that the girl's name is escaping me right now, but they made up this story and that was witness tampering, and coordinated the message for the former Trump junior staffer who made all these lies about he jumped to grab the steering wheel. You actually can't do that on the presidential limo. There's actually armored glass in the way. This is I think there's going to be I've talked to a number of folks about this. This is not about vengeance. This is about doing the right thing, and people lied. People's lives were destroyed over this. Many common folk had their lives destroyed. There has to be accountability for this.
I agree. And you go on Steve Bannon's War Room regularly as one of his guests. Do you get the feeling that he wants accountability? I mean, they took away 6 months of his life. They imprisoned this man in a place where his life was actually in danger. Do you think he is going to be pushing Trump and others to make sure that accountability is happens?
Oh, I'm sure. And again, with Steve, it's not about vengeance. This is about a deep state, a government out of control. These people are not acting in a constitutional way. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. They're the ones waging war against the American citizen, totally misusing the instruments of power of the executive branch or the legislative branch. So. Oh, absolutely. When this was happening with Steve and Dr. Navarro, I went back and did some research on this. I always feel that the use of the Department of Justice to enforce a subpoena, a congressional subpoena, is actually unconstitutional. They're actually up until about the late 1800s, there was a number of examples of essentially the equivalent of the sergeant at arms in the legislative branch going out and arresting and imprisoning. So if somebody fails to appear, that's actually the Capitol Hill Police's role and mission. I think it's frankly unconstitutional for the Department of Justice to go out enforcing subpoenas of the legislative branch. They actually have a police force. They actually have a sergeant at arms. And it's been documented through Congressional Research Service reports that went through, because I pulled some of those. I go, if they are not happy with something, they have their own police force. They can go out and actually arrest and imprison. There's historical examples of this. So I think it was a totally a collusion between Department of Justice and Congress over this. And so it's the right thing to do, is to go after and hold people accountable.
I agree. I think for a lot of people, it couldn't come soon enough. Like, they want the border closed. They want the price of things to come down. They want to see less money spent on foreign nations, more money spent on making life better here in America. But I think this is one of those areas where people want to see justice. They want to see people held accountable because people that they care about and believe in were unconstitutionally, unjustifiably arrested, imprisoned. Their lives were made a living hell. Let's move on to another story that's pretty big over on Twitter. On the Shawn Ryan military podcast, he hosted former CIA Sarah Adams. She said she knows with certainty there are over 1,000 secret al-Qaeda fighters in the United States that are recruiting and training for a future homeland attack on our native soil. What do you know about that? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I've seen her statements and her appearances on Shawn Ryan. I think she's spot on. Here's the reality of, I think we have to, not only is the open border dangerous and an invasion, but I would say northern Mexico is ungoverned space, dangerously ungoverned space that other powers, people say, well, that's another country. Who cares? We're just America first. Well, I'm America first too. But if we have allowed a condition to exist where Chinese special operators who now oversee, who actually run the drug cartels in northern Mexico that are killing 100,000 Americans a year from fentanyl. So if Chinese special operators, ISIS, Venezuelan, Tren de Aragua, Iranians, etc., if they have base camps across the border, which they do, I think this is a clear and present danger. We cannot, it's not just, even if we close the border, we've allowed a dangerous buildup of groups who are actively involved in sending violence and mayhem and death and destruction across the border. They're gonna figure it out one way or another. So I think we need to make some examples. We need to make a few life lessons for some of these personalities in their base camps. So she's spot on. I think this might be related to what we saw in New Orleans, maybe even Las Vegas. But essentially, northern Mexico is ungoverned space. The border obviously has been intentionally let open by Mayorkas, by Biden. And then, even Houston has become known as essentially a forward operating base for radicals inside of America. I mean, even the imam for what's his name, SDJ, the New Orleans shooter, and his name's escaping me right now. His imam is referring all questions to CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which is if you know anything about CARE, it's a very, very middle of the road, very open-minded group. I'm kidding. No, CARE is a radical extremist group. So, and that's in the Houston area, so Houston has become almost an ungoverned space inside of America. I mean, it's the center of election fraud for Texas, is Harris County in Houston. So there's a lot of issues, even inside of America, of places that are essentially become de facto forward operating bases for these different groups that are bent on destroying America.
Wow. Yeah. His name is Shamsud Din Jabbar. And I didn't realize that they were asking CARE to take over. Probably, they don't really know how to respond or act on this. Let me put something up here on the screen, Colonel. Okay. So Tom Homan, the border czar, saying we're not out of the woods. This country is in grave danger. He went on in this quote to say over 2 million people escaped into the country, people that didn't want to be screened, that didn't want to be fingerprinted, that didn't want free housing, free food, a free cell phone. Why would they do that? Over 300 people on the terrorist watch list. He believes that these people escaped in the country on purpose. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, we let Congress failed to stop an out of control administration that just threw the border open. And come on, are you kidding me? This was an absolute Wild West freak show, Mos Eisley spaceport of every criminal terrorist personality in the world who just thought, okay, they obviously don't care. We don't like America. America is the source of all evil. Hey, now's your time to get into America. So yeah, we haven't. And, I think it's going to be very interesting as we move toward deportations. The American people are strongly in favor of deportations. You said this 4, 5, 6 years ago. Everybody would say, oh, it's racist. Oh, it's wrong. Wow. We got more than a plurality now that say, hey, we need to do deportations, because we've seen what collapsed society looks like. Most Americans now realize it. You got a lot of aging, I'll say it, an aging, a lot of white liberals who always say it's really not that bad. As soon as you hear a white liberal say it's not that bad, they've lost their minds. So yes, it's that bad. It's horrible. Why are people leaving New York and California in droves? They've reached the tipping point. So it's bad, and I think Homan is right on.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this big story? I'm reading that President Biden, the White House, his counselors, they're contemplating an attack on Iran before President Trump can take office. They're justifying this by saying attacking Iran's nuclear systems right now is the best time to do it. This is the open window, regardless of Biden leaving and Trump coming in. What are your thoughts on this story?
Well, we should obviously not trust anything that the Biden team, or really the Biden cabal, whoever has been running the country for the last 4 years, anything they say or do. It's riddled with Iranian spies. Why would Iranian spies, who really are having a significant influence in the conduct of the Biden administration, and Rob Malley at State Department. Okay. He's just the best known of the names of the personalities, but there's CIA, Asif Rahman, who was the person who, as soon as Israel shared their war plans with Iran, who was the first person to leak it? Oh, a polygraphed, trusted CIA official named Asif Rahman. Isn't that interesting? Riddled with Iranian spies because of this just strange love affair that the Obama-Biden folks have with Iran, this bizarre, John Brennan. So, I mean, are they doing this because they just want to create chaos? They want to kill many of their own kind, meaning Iranians, because they think that somehow would behoove Iran. I think it's kind of crazy. We're in a very weakened military state. I don't see it, and I'm not seeing the evidence because a lot of forces would have to be moved into place to do something like this. I hope not, but I don't put anything past the corrupt Biden enablers, this cabal that's been running the country. So I'm concerned. I'm not necessarily seeing or feeling the evidence of forces moving into place, but I wouldn't put anything past them. But these are the same people as, we've been playing this game since the 90s of, Iran is 15 minutes away from a nuclear warhead. They just have to turn one more screw and they'll have that nuclear warhead. We've been saying this since the 90s. I at this point in time, I think you have to presume Iran does have nuclear warheads. It's been my theory. is that they most likely have anywhere from 20 to 50 nuclear warheads, most likely North Korean, because those warheads would mate with the missiles that Iran has. Now, are those warheads safe and reliable? That's a totally different question. But does Iran have nuclear weapons? Yeah, I'd say at this point in time, it's this. We've been playing this 15-minute game that they're 15 minutes away from having a nuclear warhead since the 90s. I think they have nukes. I don't put any. I hope not. I'm not feeling the military movements to get ready for a strike. And there are indicators that even unclassified you'd notice. But at the same time, I don't put anything past this cabal that has not yet let go of this country.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's actually a really good point. Like we keep thinking, oh, they just need to get a little bit more uranium. That their scientists are just right on the verge. It's like, why not just outsource it? Just go get some from Kim Jong-un, pass it through Russia down. I mean, that's how they got a lot of those drones. They got them from Iran so that Russia could attack Ukraine. So why not just lean on your partners that the world already knows, and then just keep your mouth shut about it? But I would have to think that maybe they wouldn't publicly say it, but I would guess that Israel and the United States probably know with certainty whether they have them or not, and they're just being tight-lipped about it.
Well, definitely Israel has shown time and again an amazing ability to penetrate the Iranian structure. And, what does that reflect? It reflects that Iran, there is a lot of citizens inside of Iran that don't support their government. I think that's very ample evidence. Now, in the most recent strikes that where Israel used the F-35s, the stealth fighters, extremely effectively, essentially eviscerated and destroyed the entire air defense network of Iran. Iran has been a bit vulnerable. So Israel just annihilated their entire air defense network in one night. Iran has been trying to stand still, hoping like Jurassic Park, hoping nobody notices them, because they are in a very vulnerable state right now.
Is this why Israel also immediately moved after Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia, to wipe out so many of the little bases, communications, satellites there in Syria?
Oh, yeah. And that was an ugly multi-party civil war. But Israel, again, doesn't have the scale or scope of the American intelligence community, but boy, when they focus, they are good. And so they knew everything, and they are still moving with a righteous anger since October 7th. And so this was their opportunity to annihilate all the Iranian elements. And they've schwacked a number of times since October 7th, IRGC leaders who decided to show up and stay in the guest house in Syria, so Damascus, and they've been wiped out. I can't even keep track of who's in charge of the IRGC right now. They get schwacked so often. So it's Israel's good at this, and so they took this opportunity to just totally zero out the Iranian presence in Iran.
Okay. Why is NATO so determined to make Ukraine a member of NATO? I have limited experience, but a lot of common sense. If that is going to drag Europe into war, why not just leave them out and say, listen, we're going to support you economically, we're going to trade with you, but we're not going to pull you into something that immediately puts a Russian target on our back. Why such a big push for Ukraine to be a member of NATO?
Well, I'm just going back on NATO statements just during the war in Ukraine, and until, let's say, roughly a year ago, and the war's been going on for 3 years, even NATO was not really advocating for Ukrainian membership in NATO, but it has suddenly become a thing. Jens Stoltenberg is gone now as the NATO secretary, and he really started going on a rant about this about 6 to 8 months ago. And it's like, it wasn't even a NATO position for the first couple of years of the war, essentially, to make Ukraine part of NATO, but now it's become a thing. I don't know if it's a relevance thing. I don't know. I mean, one unexplained situation that nobody can explain is, what is NATO vis-a-vis the European Union and their military component? Because if you look at the European Union and all the units they list as part of the EU military, it's exactly the same units that are in NATO. So whose military is this? Is this NATO's military? Is this the EU's? I mean, this is when I was in government, I said, could somebody please explain this EU thing vis-a-vis NATO? Nobody could. And for years, NATO was, why do we even have NATO anymore? Why? What is its relevance? What is its purpose? And, I don't know if this is NATO bureaucracy seeing this as a way to build an enduring purpose for NATO, but it still is unresolved. What in the world is NATO vis-a-vis this super government called the EU, which is just an oppressive layer of bureaucracy on top of the national governments of Europe? Nobody's even been able to explain that. You got this extra government on top of government, and the EU is just nothing but a bloated mess. And then you got NATO, and then you got the actual socialist governments of Europe. I mean, how many layers of government do you need? I mean, this is, and at the same time, you got a number of European nation states that are teetering on the brink of collapse because of their open borders love affair. It's bizarre. So I don't know if it's just NATO bureaucracy looking at this as this is the way to make them relevant in an enduring fashion. I mean, it's like UN employees. You look at the pay scales of the UN employees, and a lot of them are retired government officials from other countries, especially Europe. What a gig. I mean, what a gig. I mean, but eventually you run out of other people's money. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. I've been trying to wrap my head around why the sudden push. It's like, can we just focus on getting this war over with? And it's like, oh, you know what? I know how we'll keep the war going. We'll make them a member of NATO. I don't know. It felt like the opposite of an off-ramp. It felt like an on-ramp, like one of those weird California ones where you think you're getting off and it wraps back around like a spaghetti bowl. I don't know if you saw this or not, but on Friday, Vice President Kamala Harris, she comes back to Congress as they get ready to certify the election and the inauguration. It's her honor and privilege to lead the Pledge of Allegiance in Congress. Her microphone is still on. She does not know the Pledge of Allegiance. Multiple times she messed up the wording. How is the Vice President of the United States of America, someone that they spent $2.5 billion running against Donald Trump, and she doesn't know the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you find that odd?
I'm trying to be kind and generous here. I'm just waiting also for SD Palti's most recent video to come out. She's the lady who does these incredible parodies of Kamala Harris. It's just, they're riotous. So I'm waiting to see hers on this. We've all done public speaking. We've all had brain freezes on simple things. I get it. But with Kamala, I mean, I don't know if it was years of drug use. I don't know if it was years of there's nothing going on upstairs anyway. Anytime you handed her a microphone on the simplest of topics, it's the unburdened speech, which it's a Marxist talking point, but what does it mean? I mean, she doesn't even know what her Marxist talking point means. I mean, this is why she got zero votes in 2019, 0 delegates in 2019 in the primary. There's nothing going on upstairs. Yet she's looking at her long-term role in politics. I think she's had her long-term role. So I think there's just nothing going on. I mean, I think she's challenged. You give her a microphone.
I just don't know. I don't know how you turn something that like my 10-year-old has memorized into word salad. I mean, like I listened to the video and I was just like, how does she not know the Pledge of Allegiance? Like, is she a Mavericks fan and Mark Cuban won't allow the Pledge of Allegiance because it's racist? Like what? Like she's the vice president of the country for whose flag we are pledging allegiance, and it's just like it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Okay, final question for you, Colonel. I appreciate you coming on. The president of Honduras has threatened President Trump. She said, if you kick Hondurans out of the United States, she will kick the U.S. military out of Honduras. Why wouldn't we kick illegal immigrants from Honduras out? And the United States is in Honduras legally, and I'm guessing provides some level of safety, boost the Honduran economy. Why would she make this threat?
Well, she wants to play hardball. I think she's going to learn the hard way with President Trump and the administration. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and I think she's talking about Joint Task Force Bravo. The air station, we've had that since the Cold War. It was a way to help keep tabs on the communists in Nicaragua. I think she once that would become real, I think she'd regret that. The remuneration, I can't even say it now. The pay that she gets, is kind of significant in their economy. I think she'll play a different tune if that came to fruition or actually was on the negotiating table.